More and more entrepreneurs and small business owners are recognizing the value of having an effective digital marketing strategy in order to grow their business bottom line and ultimately creating more freedom within their day. Data from my friends over at business.com indicates a significant number of business owners and marketers view digital marketing as a significant driver for growth, with studies indicating 61% of entrepreneurs report an increased value in their return on investment and effectiveness. Meanwhile, 83% of entrepreneurs cite benefits such as increased exposure, an increase in their website traffic by as much as 73%, an increased lead generation through email and search engine optimization by as much as 65%. Businesses with stronger digital maturity are more likely to see increased sales growth as well. This is all good news for my friend, Garrett Hammonds. He's a digital marketing expert for small business owners. He's a partner at Hammonds Media and Marketing, where he leads digital marketing sales and business development. He manages ad budgets of more than $16 million a year. And he's been at the forefront of helping businesses generate more than $100 million in revenue. His expertise lies in digital ads, SEO, and growth strategies. He also particularly enjoys helping the more niche companies find their way to prosperity in business through digital marketing. And he joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. My friend, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn all about your experience in digital marketing. It's great to see you and happy Monday to you, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it.
Absolutely, my friend. So, Garrett, I wanted to start our conversation by asking you your opinion on why you believe more and more small businesses and entrepreneurs are valuing having a great digital marketing strategy. Why do you think more entrepreneurs and business people are putting a better emphasis on having a more enhanced digital marketing strategy? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
That's a great question, and there's so many different pieces nowadays that go into that. With technology rapidly adapting, we get a lot of benefits from it, but then we also get a lot of things we have to learn all at one time. And so as AI has kind of taken over all the different platforms, we get these new tools, but then we have to know, well, how does that affect how I, show up on Google Maps and Apple Maps? How does that affect how my website's going to rank? How does that affect my social media? And there's all these different pieces that go along with it. And small business owners in particular, sometimes it's easier just to say, this can wait. I have other things I need to do right now. And it gets deprioritized. when ultimately, when you look at large companies out there, Deloitte does a CMO survey every single year. And for the past couple of years, the majority, by far, enterprise businesses have somewhere between 60 and 70% of their budgets, their marketing budgets, in digital. And so that's how important it is, but it can be frustrating, overwhelming, and time consuming for small business owners. And so it's just a lot going on, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Garrett, I know that you're a partner in Hammonds Media and Marketing, my friend, where you lead digital marketing, sales, and business development, my friend. So tell me about Hammonds Media and Marketing and the difference you're making, my friend.
Well, my wife and I started this company back in 2015, and we have, oh, that's not right. Sorry. 2020 was when we started, but we've had it for a number of years. And it was originally a real estate photography company. And I was working at a SaaS company doing digital. I was the digital marketing lead there, and eventually I was working at another agency. And so my focus was kind of split. But we knew we wanted to do more with it than just kind of taking pictures for folks. And so that's why we originally had our company name as just Hammonds Media, because we wanted it to be broad. And nowadays, we've been able to expand and really hit on the things that are the full picture for companies when it comes to their digital marketing. And it's different. It's different than a lot of agencies out there, but it's not inventing the wheel. One reason why we've been able to break into the market successfully is because there are so many rough marketing agencies out there that don't know how to adequately track with all the privacy changes that exist, or know how to explain tracking when we're looking at so many different attribution models that exist. So in more layman's term, it's just hard to keep up with the data, and so that's something we've really put a focus on inside of our firm. The other piece is transparency. We're really big into making sure that we have a strong partnership approach where everybody knows that they have ownership of their accounts, where everybody knows what data is driving the sales that they have, and they know that we are there with them trying to be able to grow their businesses to new levels. And so those are a couple of different things that we focus on, but we've worked with people in local businesses all the way up to Fortune 500 owned companies.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because I know one of your passions is working with businesses in niche markets, and you've managed budgets as much as $16 million a year, and you've helped businesses create over $100 million in revenue. So I'm wondering your thoughts on, how do you think you've grown as an entrepreneur, and what have you learned about the importance of really investing in the people that you help, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
You really nailed it with the very last part of investing in your people. One of the big things that I've learned in my entrepreneurial journey so far is that you cannot do it by yourself. If you want to grow, you have to be able to have the right people around you supporting the efforts. And there are solopreneurs that can be very successful, but I will wager that they don't have a lot of free time themselves. And you don't want to give yourself a job, you want to build a business. And when you build a business, that means built-in redundancy. That means people who you can trust to leave your company with if you go on vacation for a few days. And it means being able to have systems that really support the structure for how your business can function independent of one individual person, especially the owners or partners. I always hope to make myself somewhat unneeded, and that I can move on to the next thing after that because somebody else has been able to take up the mantle and really help grow the different pieces and parts of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Garrett, I'm also curious to ask you the difference between working with niche and smaller businesses versus those Fortune 500 businesses. What are the most unique and distinct differences working between those two sectors? And what are things people need to know in terms of, common digital marketing strategy, sort of tools and tricks that they can use to grow their businesses, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
In some ways, marketing is marketing across the different size of business that you're working with, whether that's a small business or a large business. You need to be able to know your ideal customer profiles. You need to be able to understand, what makes you valuable and unique and really shine inside of the market. You need to understand pain points and know where somebody would miss you if you went away. So those things are consistent across businesses, but you have a lot of different strategies depending on where you go to. For instance, let's talk about the niche businesses. So for a manufacturing company that sells industrial tape, they probably aren't trying to get out in front of as many people as somebody who's a shoe company trying to be able to sell different tennis shoes or dress shoes or whatever. Much broader audience. And so the way that you target folks inside of your advertising, inside of your organic strategies, you're going to need to be a lot more specific. And that's one of the big things that's different between small businesses and large businesses. Large businesses have a little bit more wiggle room to say, okay, I've proven myself inside of the market. I know people will buy this product. How do I show how I'm better than my competitors? How do I get out in front of people who have never heard about us? And for people who have heard about us, how do I educate them over time on why they should buy from us again and again and again? And so that you can have these big budgets and big data feeds that you go off of where you're trying to be able to increase your brand. There's even a test that is often run that's called a brand lift test, and it requires a lot of surveying and all kinds of different stuff. But for a small local business, you have to know, for the people who I'm serving right here where I'm at, where I'm located, how do I show them that I am going to be the right choice for them in comparison to everything else that's out there? And so you have to reduce your competition level. You have to say, I don't need to get out in front of everyone. I need to get out in front of the right people who are here where I'm at, and I can give them the personalized service in order to be able to start my own business growth. So that's, there's all kinds of things we could talk about there, but those are a few things that came to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And Garrett, can I also ask you about how you believe digital marketing has changed the way that we communicate with each other? And what I mean by that is so many people want to communicate without talking to people in front of a computer. But I'm also curious to know, how do you think digital marketing can make us better human-to-human communicators? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a great mindset to have, is how can we, in whatever we do, use our work to improve something. And communication is a fascinating area of marketing, because ultimately we are trying to be a part of a broader culture that we live inside of. And so you can see campaigns that have negative impacts on that. So for instance, there's a huge controversy earlier in the year with a commercial that Sydney Sweeney was in that had to do with jeans, and that can promote discrimination, right? And so when it comes to our marketing, we can have really bad impacts. But we also can look at associations like the Alzheimer's Association inside of the US, where they run these huge campaigns to be able to help people become aware of Alzheimer's and raise funds. And so we can also use our marketing as a rallying point. And so the big area, and I've used this term myself many times already, even just in this podcast, but targeting is a hunting term. It's originally, we want to shoot an arrow at something and hit that, which in some sense is always going to be true inside of marketing. But we can't just view people as objects that we're trying to throw our marketing at and hit them, and they're our target. We have to look at, how is my product genuinely helping people, and what is that going to do for how people talk about us, and what that's going to do in our communities, and how we can make a real impact. And so marketing, it's one of the broad, it's so broad. There's so many things, even in just digital marketing as a sector. But I think from a communication standpoint, we need to think about how is this going to be perceived by our audience, and is it genuinely something good for them?
Yeah, and since you've brought this up a couple of times, I'm curious, Garrett, to ask you about how you would redefine effective target marketing, knowing what the marketplace demands today. So how do you redefine effective target marketing in your view, my friend?
Yeah. I think one of the core pieces, when you say effective target marketing is when we actually have done our due diligence to understand who the audience is that is benefited by things and who the audience isn't. And then we try and empathize and actually communicate to them in a way that helps them to be able to understand what our product does and can do for them. And that ideally needs to, in practice, look like talking to people, having real conversations and building real relationships, whether you're a small or large business, doing social listening, looking at how people are talking about products like yours or problems like the one you're trying to solve online. Maybe that's Reddit, maybe that's Quora, maybe that's Facebook. There's all kinds of different platforms we can look at to see where people have communities revolving around the products. And maybe it looks like having people test the products that we have and getting real time looks at how the product comes about. But that research piece is key to being able to have proper targeting as we go through, and top of mind through all of that has to be our humanity. Who is the actual audience that we're building these relationships with?
Yeah, absolutely. And Garrett, I'm curious to get your thoughts on some statistical data. So bear with me for just a moment. So,
sure.
According to Statista, friend, the United States is ranked as the largest digital advertising market in the world, with a projected revenue of about $317 billion in 2024. And about 75% of ad dollars in the country were spent or allotted for digital advertising. And internet advertising was expected to exceed 490 billion by 2029, my friend. And finally, when we look at retail industry marketing and investing in that market, digital advertising in that market was expected to go up by as much as 15% in 2024. So I'm curious, my friend, when you hear those numbers about the growth of different sectors in advertising, they also say that entertainment digital advertising is expected to grow by 12% before the end of this year. So when you hear those numbers as statistics, what immediately comes to mind, my friend?
Well, from a personal standpoint, what comes to mind is, oh my goodness, how many more commercials am I going to have to watch on YouTube before I can watch my videos? That, but it's not shocking to me in any sense to hear some of those statistics that we are seeing a shift from traditional marketing over to digital marketing context when it comes to the budgets that are being used. And I I think that we have to be careful, and this is, coming from a digital marketing agency, we have to be careful to not over invest in digital without putting ourselves in a place where we are having real human relationships and contact with others. And sometimes that means traditional marketing. Sometimes that means specific sales methods where we have to have a human touch point with people. And if we forget that, then we will continue to see customers and users lose all sense of loyalty to brands. They'll jump from brand to brand to brand. Your retention rates will go down, and we're going to see the market continue to fracture across different industries as new players come up, or we'll just see one big player continue to dominate. And so there's lots of different things that are attached to this, but digital marketing is a tool in a larger bucket of the pieces that make up our businesses. But at the root of things, with so much AI and so many screens and so many different ways to distract ourselves, if we can use digital marketing as an extension of the real people that we actually interact with, then it will be a huge success. But if we say, let's just throw more ad dollars at this, let's build out one more landing page, maybe we'll increase visibility somewhere, maybe we'll hit those monthly metrics, but we won't have something of substance that will last if we forget what is the most important parts of our business. And so that's one thing when I hear some of those stats that I always like to remind people of.
Yeah, absolutely. Garrett, for a moment, I want to talk about your own business journey because I know you are on the path to becoming a teacher, my friend, and you didn't start your entrepreneurial journey with a business degree or a plan to run your own agency, my friend. In fact, you even were a nationally ranked debater, my friend. So the question, my friend, is how in the world did you fall into a career as a marketer, my friend? Tell me more.
It was kind of a wild journey. You're absolutely right. I started off in school. I was getting a degree in communication studies and political science, and I wanted to teach high school speech and debate. It was a huge passion of mine, and I still think anybody who can do it today when they're going through high school or college, they absolutely should be part of some sort of speech and debate training. It gives you a lot of great tools. But as I started substitute teaching and had friends who were already working as teachers, I just found these little things that built up that told me, Garrett, this isn't exactly what you want to do. There's a lot of pieces to it that I still love even today. And teaching's a huge part of running an agency. But I needed to be able to explore where was my true purpose in my career going to be and what was going to be next. And so I got my first job in Oklahoma with the American Choral Directors Association. It was a nonprofit that was a membership organization for choir teachers. And it was choir teachers in the US and all around the world, actually. And I was the young guy there. And so they said, oh, Garrett's young. He can do our social media, give him the social media. So I said, okay, I'll do that. And it was little things here and there throughout my time that I was given where I just started to fall in love with marketing and particularly digital marketing. And I got a job next as the director of membership for the Oklahoma Society of CPAs. So I got to work with a lot of amazing financial professionals, even big four companies like Deloitte and EY, KPMG. It was a great time, and I was introduced to Google Ads and started running ads for this organization, and I just had to keep pursuing it. And so I went to a SaaS company, then I was at a digital marketing agency, and then I started my own. And so I just fell in love with it along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Garrett, I know that you have an answer for business people that come up to you and say that digital marketing doesn't work for us, my friend. So tell me your answer. How you would combat that notion and why digital marketing can work for even the most niche of companies. My friend, what are your thoughts there?
Well, the first thing that I biasly want to say is that digital marketing is one of the most important things for any business, even if you are in a hyper niche industry. But I also want to recognize, that kind of statement comes from a place of vulnerability. It's somebody who doesn't necessarily understand all the different aspects of digital marketing and what it can do for a business. And it's somebody who's been hit by all the massive changes that are happening out there, and it's difficult. And so you just stick with what you know. And if you're a local service-based business, you're a plumber, you're an HVAC company, you may have gotten most of your business by going to networking events or getting friends and family to recommend you to others. And over years, that builds up and you have a real business. And so I don't want to take away from that. But the big thing that digital marketing helps you to do is it helps you go beyond just here and now. Digital marketing helps expand you into somebody that's in a different state can learn about your company. And maybe it's even say HVAC companies. Say you put out a piece of content that educates people about the latest compressors or something. I know nothing about HVAC, but if let's pretend that that's something that's needed. They do an education piece. Well, now they're teaching their audience, but maybe there's also an HVAC company that's in another state that they learned something and they got value from it, and they get a call from someone in your state and then they refer it to you because they learned about this valuable piece of information from your website. So you could have a million different scenarios, but digital marketing expands your business beyond where you can go just through your physical locations. And if you don't want to take advantage of that, if you can get by just with word of mouth, just by going and networking things, knocking on doors, more power to you. But that doesn't mean digital marketing doesn't work. And it doesn't mean that digital marketing isn't something that could benefit your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Garrett, you also told me that you and your wife, Grace, when you started this company, you learned a lot about risk taking in business and the importance of creating a neurodiverse workforce, my friend. So tell me about the importance of that and what you and your wife learned about risk taking in business, my friend.
That is a piece of our business that's near and dear to our heart. So I'll speak to the risk taking portion first and then the neurodiversity piece. Risk taking, when we were trying to decide, do we quit our full-time jobs and go full-time with our own business? That's a scary leap. And every single time that somebody does that with any business, if they're not scared, there's something that they probably need to step back. There should be a little bit of fear inside of you because you are it's like you go to the top of a mountain and you jump and you hope that you can fly. And if you don't equip yourself with the right means, in my case, I'd need like a solid hang glider or something. I don't know. If you don't give yourself the right tools, then you're just going to fall and roll down the mountain, and it's probably going to hurt a little bit. So we had to consider a lot of things. We talked with CPAs and lawyers, and we got mental health help. We wanted to make sure we both had counselors again because we hadn't had counselors in a little while. So we looked at all the different aspects, and we had enough of a push that we could say, we can do this. And we planned everything out and we were ready. And that's one of the big reasons why we were able to be successful up to the point that we are now. Neurodiversion is a huge part of how we operate our businesses. So Grace is autistic and ADHD, and then I am in the top 93rd percentile of people with inattentive ADHD. And so we're both very neurodiverse, and it's a huge portion of who we are, and we love it. But we know that changes how people work in the work environment. And so a lot of the time, you're never going to ask somebody, hey, disclose to me if you're neurodiverse when you're hiring them, because that would be super illegal, but also just not cool. We want to create work environments that make it to where people who think differently, come from different backgrounds, different cultures, all of those different pieces are able to be safe and set up for success. And so one example of that, we don't do internal time tracking for our clients. We charge a retainer, and we pay people based on just knowing that they're professionals. So a lot of agencies will time track, and this is just overwhelming for someone like me. If I have to think about, oh, I'm going to task switch and go to Google Ads, and then I'm going to answer this email, and then I'm going to, go do product data, and then I'm having to hit a time clock on each of those different things. Well, it's just enough of anxiety bolstering that I will avoid all of it and just kind of curl up in a ball. Task switching is hard enough for ADHD folks, but there's all kinds of different things like that we want to be able to have a company that listens and cares for folks, and that's ultimately how we build our systems.
Yeah, and as someone myself with a physical disability, Garrett, I'm also curious to ask you about the competitive advantage hiring folks with disabilities can offer organizational culture and how it can help improve your digital marketing? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Oh my goodness, it can be so good for a company because we get caught up so much. We as human beings, we get caught up in what we can see here and now, and a lot of corporate cultures in particular can get honed in on standardization. And how can we standardize this? How can we increase efficiency? How can we do this and that? And again, it's kind of at scale. You can't forget the humans that make up these different things. Folks with physical disabilities, mental disabilities, all of these different pieces, their perspectives on the world are coming from a place that's deeply different than somebody who doesn't have those in particular challenges or superpowers. However, I don't want to undermine real challenges that all kinds of folks have, but they also make us so unique and wonderful. So I think some of those perspectives can help us be able to catch things in our company that we would have never caught that was hurting our companies if we didn't have those folks on our team. So that's one example. I'm sure there's so many things we could talk about there, but that's one that comes to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And Garrett, I'm also curious to ask you your top three methods or pieces of advice for creating consistent, engaging, and interesting content. Because, our
Mhm.
friends at Indeed and LinkedIn tell us that our average attention spans are only about 7 seconds, my friend. So what do you think is the key there, my friend?
Yeah, yeah. I'll throw out a framework that I've used for many years called the three E's. So you want to, inside of the content you're creating, either educate, engage, or entertain. And ideally, if you can do all three in one piece of content, you've done it. That should be the goal behind it, creating things. But most of the time, because of those short attention spans, one of the most important pieces of creating good pieces of content is the hook, and then the actual. We even look at sometimes thumbnail retention if we're talking about videos, but we need something that will stop people from what they're doing and be like, oh, what is that? That's interesting. And by the end of the content, you want to have something that people remember. It's funny, our initials for Hammonds Media and Marketing is HMM, so and we've kind of joked around internally about that being marketing that makes you think, or thought-provoking marketing. And we've chuckled, but it's truly what you want to do with your content. You want people to see something, and then when they go home and they see their partner, their spouse, they say, "Oh man, I got to show you this thing that I saw earlier today. It was so cool. Hold on, let me pull it up." That's the type of marketing that you want to be able to generate. And so have a good hook, have educative and engaging pieces, and make it entertaining. Have fun with it. Don't be afraid to rhyme or sing. That makes people remember your content more. There's all kinds of little things you can do. But those three E's, that's what I tell people to pay attention to when they're doing their planning.
Yeah, absolutely. And Garrett, I'm going to combine the next two questions because they're interconnected, my friend. I'm curious to ask you how digital marketing can help in achieving peace of mind while you're running a business. And I'm also curious to ask you about how do you make sure that you don't compromise your own happiness when running a
Mhm.
business? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I have a quote that I keep on a sticky note underneath my computer that says, if it costs your inner peace, it's too expensive. And so we can't make our jobs our everything, so we always need to be thinking about, how can I do everything I can with my work, but then also have good separation. Our whole lives can't be our work. But with the other, remind me again, what was the first thing that you asked? I got caught up in that thought there with the inner peace.
Yeah, about how digital marketing can make things easier for you from a business perspective in terms of running a business and giving you an overall peace of mind as an entrepreneur. That was the first part of the question.
Yes. So this is something, from a service standpoint, wanting to be good stewards for our clients. We always try and be able to keep up with everything that we can to be able to create peace of mind for folks. But just running your own business, what digital marketing can do is help create cogs and wheels that are turning even when you're asleep, even when you are traveling or in a meeting. You can have these pieces of your company working for you all the time. So for instance, if you create a really good blog article that starts to gain traction in organic search, or maybe starts to show up in generative AI rankings, or what we call GEO nowadays, those things can build momentum and start to snowball over time. And you have to keep them up to date, and you have to make sure that it stays consistent with the audience that you're trying to serve. But it will continue to bring you more and more things if it is high quality content. And so that's peace of mind, that you don't always have to be on all the time in order to build your customer pipeline, but you need to build the right foundations, and it's hard. Digital marketing, I think sometimes people think, oh, we'll just put out some Facebook posts and then all of a sudden we'll have customers just knocking down the doors. And it's not that easy. It's quite time consuming, and it takes a while. Your first year of digital marketing, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of leads unless you really, really know what you're doing. And that's why people hire folks like us, is to help them speed up that process and know that they're building the right foundations from the beginning. But it's a wonder how much you can just take a deep breath and really find some ease in your body when you know that you have stuff working for you all the time.
Yeah, and Garrett, I've got three questions left for you, and the first of those three questions is this, my friend. You brought up lead generation, and as a professional speaker myself, I'm always curious to create better strategies for better lead generation. So how do you think digital marketing can help us be better lead generators, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. Well, it can really, from start to finish, have touch points with customers that come through inside of our pipelines. And so I say pipeline, it obviously comes, it's an industrial term, and we think of water flowing through a pipe as we go through, and that means there's a start, and then there's a pathway, and then there's something that they come out on the other side. So digital marketing, we have things like our social media that maybe is the very beginning of that, or YouTube. And we have videos and content where people are introduced to us for the first time in very non-confrontational ways. It's easy to approach. Maybe it makes us laugh, or that entertaining side of the three E's. But then you also eventually want to ask people to engage with you more. And so in the life cycle marketing, and it's not as clean as we always want it to be. We want it to have all these specific steps, and it doesn't always. It's compressed nowadays. But maybe you build a lead magnet that is running through an ad, and you ask people for their contact information that then turns into an email sequence that's automated and can go out and help people learn even more about your business and help answer the needs that they have. And eventually you may ask them for a demo. Maybe you want to show them your product, or you want to have a sales call with them. And the ideal end to that is, of course, a sale. So you have this lead pipeline. So that can manifest in all kinds of different ways. But I like to compare it to a relationship. So if I met somebody at a coffee shop and they were cute, and I wanted to go get their phone number, maybe I walk up and start talking to them, and I'm not just going to shout out, "Hey, will you marry me?" That would be insane, right? They'd probably say no. But so many people, they start off with that in their pipeline. They just jump out in front of them and they say, "Hey, will you buy this product?" When they know nothing about it. They've never heard of you before. This is the first time you're popping up in front of them. But we have then a follow-up question if they say no. Typically, we want to be able to know, will you, if it goes right, maybe you ask, "Can I go on a date with you first?" And maybe they say yes. And maybe eventually you ask them to marry you again and they say no. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean things are over, right? Maybe you say, "Well, can we keep dating though?" And they date longer, and eventually when you ask them to marry you, they say yes. So you have this relational back and forth in a pipeline that you have to know is non-linear. It can happen at all different stages, but it builds off of each other, and that's the real point behind the pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I ask you my last question, I wanted to also ask you about the importance of staying consistent as an entrepreneur, particularly in digital marketing, my friend, because so many digital people or entrepreneurs can use digital marketing and their message becomes saturated if they're not consistently putting their content out as in engaging ways. So this is a two-part question for you. I'm curious about avoiding saturation when you bring your business to a digital marketing stage, and how important is it for you to stay consistent and committed to creating content that really moves the needle of progress, my friend? What are your thoughts there? You can take that question in any direction you like, my friend.
I think so often people confuse consistency with frequency. And so that's my big pet peeve on things is, I remember back in like 2017, if you were to put out, 20 posts a week on Facebook, they would push that out to everybody, and the impressions were amazing, and it was great for businesses. And then all of a sudden, around, I don't know, 2019-ish, 2018-ish, you had some big algorithm changes, and all of a sudden, it just went away. But people still have that mentality on so many platforms that I just need to show up as often as possible, and that means people will see me if I'm putting out things as frequently as I can. So that's obviously different than consistency. Consistency is people can rely on me to show up on a regular basis. Now, what is that? Maybe it's once a month. Maybe it's a couple times a month. Maybe it's once a week. But when we set a consistent pace in content creation for ourselves, that is where we start to build momentum, because then people can build you into their routines. Maybe they get used to hearing your perspectives on things. Maybe they get a chuckle that they desperately needed in a week. So that's where we can get so oversaturated, and there's a million pieces of content out there every single day trying to grab our attention. And so it'd be arrogant for us to think, well, my content is going to be the most important to everybody, and everybody needs to look at this post. It has to be for specific people, the people who we're trying to serve. And, sometimes the goal of content creation isn't to go viral. It's to just get out in front of a few people, the right people. And that is what leads to sales. But the more that you can build your community online, the better that your content will be. And we have to show up at a regular basis, not necessarily a higher frequency all the time.
Yeah, Garrett, I'm curious to ask you finally about your legacy, how you want that to be defined. So I'll answer that question, but I'm also wanting to follow up on something you said in your last answer, and the importance of creating what we call in the speaking world sort of a value proposition statement. How do you do that as a digital marketer or a business owner? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah. So value proposition, you need to be able to know exactly what you offer that's different from everybody else and who you offer it to. Again, I go back to the idea of, if you were to disappear overnight, who would miss you? And if your product disappeared overnight, who would miss that? And so that's where you start to build that value proposition is what do people really care about? Why does it exist? And why will it keep existing over time? We have to revisit our value propositions sometimes. But you spoke about legacy. What do I want my legacy to be with Hammonds Media and Marketing? I don't necessarily care if I'm remembered long term or something like that with it. I do want the people who come in contact with me nowadays to feel like they were comfortable and that they could trust me and that I was integral in working with them. Those are just personal goals. But from a company standpoint, I want people to see a business that is working with them and for them, and that it just is kind of synonymous with a trusted group that can help your business grow. That's what I want the company to be. And the long term, the technologies will change, the employees will change, but if that concept, that idea can live on with the company, I'll be quite happy.
Absolutely, my friend. And finally, Garrett, tell me, if people want to get connected with you personally or Hammonds Media and Marketing, what's the best way they can do that?
So our website is hmm.agency, and you can find me in a number of places. You can email me at Garrett, spelled Garrett, at hmm.agency, or I'm on LinkedIn. If you search Garrett Hammonds, I think the URL pathway is Garrett-Hammonds-digital, something like that. So I would love to be able to talk with others more about all things digital marketing. And Thank you again for having me on. I've loved it.
Absolutely. Well, Garrett, I want to thank you for the footprint that you've made in digital marketing and your efforts for making it more inclusive for all business owners of all abilities be seen, heard, and valued in the world of business. My friend, I want to thank you for your time and engaging in conversation with me on this Monday. It's most appreciated.
Thanks so much, Kevin.